So today, President Trump has unveiled that he will sign an executive order establishing a massive migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, capable of holding up to 30,000 undocumented migrants. Announced alongside the Lake and Riley Act, which mandates detention for unauthorized immigrants accused of theft and violent crimes, this move represents a dramatic shift in U.S. immigration enforcement. Trump justifies the facility as a response to what he calls, quote, the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people, end quote. He has emphasized Guantanamo's high security reputation, describing it as a, quote, tough place to get out of, end quote. The plan would double detention capacity and significantly expand the military's role in immigration enforcement, something that may be constitutionally dubious. Although Trump claims it will only hold those charged with theft and violent crimes, the decision has ignited fierce controversy. Guantanamo Bay, long infamous for detaining terrorism suspects without trial, now will blur the line between immigration enforcement and national security detention. Concerns over due process violations, human rights abuses, and violations of international law have surfaced, with opponents calling the move inhumane and legally questionable. Despite the backlash, though, Trump has ordered the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to move forward with preparations. However, specifics on funding, operations, and legal challenges remain unclear. Now, this move raises major concerns. Guantanamo is a military prison whose unique location allows detainees to be held without formal trial. It exists in a legal gray area outside of U.S. soil, yet under American control, and this historically denied prisoners full constitutional protections. This model, once reserved only for terrorism suspects, now appears to be transitioning to immigrants. Now, much like terror suspects, the detainees could be kept away from U.S. courts and public scrutiny, effectively creating a system where people can be held indefinitely without trial with little legal recourse. Now, this somewhat resurrects the memory of past camps that held both American citizens and immigrants. Consider Tule Lake, the most infamous of the 10 Japanese incarceration camps in the U.S. during World War II. Originally, like the others, it became a high-security segregation center in 1943 for those deemed disloyal. The conditions worsened as the camp became militarized with armed guards, tanks, and brutal crackdowns on unrest. Tule Lake remained open until 1946, long after the war ended, leaving behind a legacy of injustice and a dark stain on American history. But there's another concern here: radicalization. Unless the intent is to detain the migrants for life, they will eventually be released. When they do, they will be angry and possibly radicalized, seeking revenge against the U.S. The cartels have long-standing relationships with Middle Eastern terrorist groups and jihadists, including Hezbollah and the Iranian Kurds, who have worked with Los Zetas in Mexico. Until now, these relationships have been about money. But if the U.S. begins detaining migrants without trial, that's going to change things. Suddenly, there is a mandate for retribution on our own borders. And if you don't think detention does not lead to radicalization, look no further than Camp Bucca. Camp Bucca in Iraq originally was intended as a detention facility for suspected insurgents. Instead, it became a breeding ground for extremism. The prison camp brought together some of the most dangerous jihadists, including future ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. What should have been a containment strategy at the facility turned into an unintended training ground, where hardened extremists recruited and indoctrinated others, many of whom had little prior connection to terrorism before their detention. And this likely will happen with those immigrants that commit minor crimes and find themselves at the facility. They'll be near hardened cartel members and possibly actual terrorists. Now, those detained at Camp Bucca obviously became more radicalized. They had grievances, and that became a powerful tool, giving jihadist leaders a compelling narrative to recruit followers. When Camp Bucca closed in 2009, thousands of detainees were released back into Iraqi society without any de-radicalization efforts. Many of these men, now well-connected and further hardened, became the core of ISIS, bringing with them organizational structures, battle tactics, and a shared ideology forged behind prison walls. Instead of neutralizing the terrorist threat, Camp Bucca helped create it, turning detention into a pipeline for extremism. And history will repeat itself if the U.S. now applies the same strategy to migrants at Guantanamo Bay. If history has taught us anything, it is that heavy-handed detention policies often create the very threats they aim to eliminate. The proposed expansion of Guantanamo Bay as a migrant detention center risks repeating past mistakes, fueling resentment, and fostering conditions that could lead to radicalization rather than deterrence. Without a clear legal framework, due process protections, or reintegration strategies, this policy not only challenges constitutional and international norms, but also carries grave long-term security implications. In the pursuit of control, the U.S. may instead be sowing the seeds of future conflict. This time, though, it'll be on its own soil.